Welcome to the Nine, an era of transformation. I'm your host again, Ebony Brandon. Prime Minister Dr. Terrance Drew often speaks of his humble beginnings. He's used his story over the years as a teacher, then medical doctor, and now as leader of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis to show others how having faith in God, being determined, disciplined, and making wise choices can change the course of anyone's life. Dr. Drew's faith and desire to serve his countrymen and nation resonated throughout our conversation. It was clear to see why he has been adamant as Prime Minister that good governance, transparency, and accountability must be the hallmarks of his administration, why he has passed laws and implemented policies that will have positive impacts on St. Kitts and Nevis for generations to come. At the root of it all is his vision to ensure that St. Kitts and Nevis and her people are well prepared to face the greatest threat to humanity in the planet's history, climate change. Now wearing the cap of Minister of Finance, National Security, Citizenship, Immigration, Health, Human Resource Management, and Social Security, Prime Minister Drew is determined to ensure that St. Kitts and Nevis becomes a well-governed, sustainable island state that's resilient against climate change and any other threats that may arise. Prime Minister Drew is on a mission to set the foundation for St. Kitts and Nevis's survival for generations to come.
Long before he became a medical doctor, at just 19 years old, Terrance Michael Drew became a teacher, one of the most noble professions, so he could help to mold young minds. A few short years later, he was given another opportunity to expand his ability to serve others by studying medicine in Cuba. He then moved to the US, where he specialized in internal medicine, which in the early 2010s was a field of medicine that was very much needed in the Federation. Not long after returning home to establish his medical practice, Dr. Drew became involved in politics, a decision that would change the course of his life forever. While Dr. Drew was unsuccessful in becoming the MP for Constituency 8 on his first two tries in the 2015 and 2020 elections, he steadily improved his support base by remaining active in his community and advocating on behalf of the voiceless. In 2021, the St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party went through a significant change when Dr. Drew became leader of the organization, taking over from the Right Honourable Dr. Denzil Douglas. Dr. Drew had barely settled in when in 2022, just months after becoming leader of the SKNLP, the then ruling coalition government comprised of the People's Action Movement, Concerned Citizens Movement, and People's Labour Party collapsed, plunging the nation into another election cycle, barely 2 years after the 2020 elections. Further compounding the situation was the fact that the Federation was still hurting from the devastating impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, and families were still struggling to stay afloat. This was aggravated by the fact that St. Kitts and Nevis's borders remained closed, while the rest of the world had returned to business as usual. As we sat in his conference rooms just a few days ahead of Independence 2024, Dr. Drew reflected on this period.
Of course, it was a tumultuous time in the sense that you described it exactly what it was. How do you go from taking over a political organization and in a few months go straight into a general elections, having just gone through a general elections, 2 years earlier. However, I think we were able to handle the situation because the party is strong and its structures and the commitment of the comrades of the party. I think those things were critically important in helping us to go from an internal race within the party, which was the first time an open race in its history. So there the party was battling with a new paradigm and settling down from that, and then had to shift from that straight into a general elections. I think that is the first time that has happened in our history. So I would say it was very challenging, but I think we faced the challenge. And of course, it has its own issues that have to be dealt with. But I would say it was a challenging time, but we stood the test of time and we were able to go from just a political party in opposition to a political party that took the realm of government here in St. Kitts and Nevis.
And clearly there was some degree of pre-planning and organization despite the fact that there were those other dynamics within the SKNLP happening, because in short order there was not just a manifesto out, but there was a manifesto that was provided digitally, so individuals had access to it on their mobile devices.
Yes.
It was very comprehensive in
Yes.
terms of the plans that were laid out for an administration should you come to power. And that in and of itself must have taken some doing, unifying efforts within the organization as well, everybody coming together out of that conference where new leadership was decided as well.
Yes, and of course, I think to a great extent, I understood and we understood that the party must always be in a ready-to-go mode. I think our long history and our structures allow us to be like that. But apart from that, the leadership had to be driving that to make sure that the party would not be caught off guard at any given point. But not only be caught off guard, but be ready for a general election. Because as you know, when there are early elections, the party that is in opposition is the party that is disadvantaged. And I think that was the calculation from the other side. Let us rupture everything now, call the elections now. The St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party just went through an internal race. They have a new leader. There's no way they can be ready. So that was the first mistake of judgment that they made. But we were ready. And as you pointed out, just looking at our manifesto, it showed that we had gone through a process of deep thinking, consultation, and so forth to make a manifesto like that captured the imagination of the people. So we were up to the task, as I said, but it took a great deal of strong leadership and poignant leadership and a vision to really push that forward. And I want to thank the whole team and the comrades of the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party who really helped us to get to that point where we reached and we were able to convince the people of St. Kitts and Nevis that we were the best choice, and they voted us in.
And that's key to note, because with the very few exception of a handful of elections, the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party has been able to maintain the popular vote throughout elections, even ones which they have lost.
Yes.
And it was just a matter of the seat distribution that didn't come through in the party's favor. So you went into this election, however, with the overwhelming support of, again, the majority of the people putting you into office and saying, hey, we're not so happy with what we had before. We're looking for new leadership, new change. And I think you being at the helm of the party at that point of time would have made a difference. What does the support of the base? And clearly you would have gotten some underfencers, those swing voters, as we like to refer to them as, who would have come over and said, I'm willing to give you an opportunity.
Yes. So I think that was critical. But even though they had imploded, it does not automatically mean that you would win, because there were two other viable parties that were part of the construct that were vying to take leadership here in St. Kitts and Nevis. So we still had to do the work of convincing the people that we were the right party to be elected. So it was not a given. And all the things we did were really geared towards convincing the people of that. Now you ask a critical question in terms of the support that we would have. The support was critically important because you still have to convince the base of the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party. And then outside of that, you have to convince the fencers and those even from other political parties that they should come over to the Labour Party. And we did extremely well in the sense that, for example, in constituency number 8, we won all the boxes in the constituency. Even though there's an area of the constituency which is Kayon, which is known as the strongest opposition area in the whole of St. Kitts and Nevis. And I think it might be the first time in history since independence that was done by any party, to win all of the boxes in constituency number 8. So it shows that we had our base together and we had support from across the fence as well. And there were some persons who were also disillusioned with the construct that they supported, that they didn't support either. So there were a number of things coming together, but the critical thing was that I had to, of course, demonstrate to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis that I have the gravitas for the task of leading the country, that I had the right team, that we had the right policies and plans through our manifesto. And with all of that, I think coming together, we were able to convince the people. And so that is why we are here today.
COVID-19 changed our lives. It changed the way we interacted with each other. It influenced our movement, education, and even our politics. In the Caribbean, ahead of St. Kitts and Nevis' 5th August 2022 federal elections, two Caribbean nations, St. Lucia and Grenada, saw their governments change, and in both, the pandemic played a significant role in the electorate's decision. In neighboring Antigua and Barbuda, while the Labour government maintained a one-seat majority in their January 2023 elections, it lost its convincing lead, again in large part because voters used the elections to send a message about how they viewed their government's management of the pandemic. While the implosion of the coalition government in St. Kitts and Nevis due to their internal power struggles was one factor, the Federation was no different in that elections were also used by the electorate to send a clear message post-COVID. Prime Minister Drew explained that on coming to office, it was necessary to hit the ground running on day one to begin the process of turning the Federation's economy around. He outlined his administration's impressive achievements, all delivered in just over 2 years.
There were a lot what we call a polycrisis. There was the issue of COVID itself and the devastation that it caused. There was the political implosion and uncertainty. There was the politicization of a health situation, being the COVID and keeping people locked down. The government then forcing people to wear masks and taking measures that were not necessary. The shutdown hurt the economy significantly. It was a bad decision. It was a political decision that would affect us for a number of years because we got out the blocks late within the OECS with respect to our tourism sector. All of them were already open up and welcoming people. I think all of them had record numbers except us because they had opened up much earlier and therefore people were already booking to go to those countries. Apart from that, hurting the economy, just the post-COVID situation of the supply chain and all of that taking place, then people who were in certain sectors were not working at all, such as those who were working in the tourism sector. A lot of farmers were being affected. Everybody, construction, every sector was affected. And then they were not given the opportunity to bounce back as quickly as possible, which was a significant bad decision that was made by the previous administration that we are still being affected by. What was sad about it is that they just depended on the CBI program alone. And so that is why I told the people that the CBI program would be the hardest thing that I have to deal with, because I knew the issues and some of the things that are happening. I saw them coming because of how badly the previous government administration managed the program. People could not see it then, but I see it then, and I informed the people that that would take place. One of the other decisions that was made was to allow the economy to become almost 70% dependent on one sector. I think that was worse than the days of when we were just tourism alone, because then we had finances and some agriculture. 70%. How can you bring your country to depend 70% on one sector, and a fragile sector that the CBI is not a manufacturing sector that you have control over? These things are affecting us today. And I think the people need to know that these are the challenges that we have had to deal with. So in a great sense, those decisions coming in created a polycrisis, some of them homemade, some of them, of course, international. But those decisions that were made homemade, coupled with the international issues, really created the perfect storm for the polycrisis here in St. Kitts and Nevis, which we will see building out. The good thing, though, is that we have a plan. There are going to be challenges, and I'm not going to pretend there are going to be challenges, but I know the plan can work. It was well thought out. We are seeing the plan coming more into effect as we go forward. And I think that at the end of the day, it will position St. Kitts as a sustainable island state with a diversified economy. I am really excited about this part. The part that might be not so exciting is that there will be some months of challenges, some months of pain as we transition. but I must transition this economy, and that is where we are heading. And so there's some exciting things that I know we have done and coming on stream. So there's hope.
So maybe we can start then with, as far as your ministerial responsibilities
Yes.
are concerned, finance and
Right.
your responsibilities there in re-energizing the St. Kitts and Nevis economy. First
Right.
thing you did was open borders.
Yes.
But there are a number of other things that you have done as well, because I have observed, and I believe it's a fair observation, you're a medical doctor.
Yes.
And the best analogy I can make is that you went in and you applied quick band-aids
Yes.
to stop,
Yes.
but then you also are creating longer-term solutions based on the assessment of the problem
Yes.
to fix it completely.
Yes.
You would say that's fair?
I would say that's fair.
So tell me, you started first with
Yes.
reopening borders, which means you can reboost your economy.
Yes.
What else did you immediately do as you hit the ground?
Okay, yes, and what you have said is exactly right. We had to hit the ground running. I remember the elections taking place the 5th of August, and the first decision I made, I think that was the 7th of August, a Sunday evening when I met with the task force for COVID-19. And I said, please show me the data, because I'm a medical doctor by profession. I'm taught how to read data. That's what I do as well. And I said, the data is saying that we can open up, and not only open up, could have opened up months before. And that was confirmed by other professionals in the room. And I said, well, open up the country immediately. And if you look at this IMF report, they applauded me for that. Once that happens, tourists start to book again, and all sorts of things. But again, we were a bit behind the 8 ball because the other countries had gone ahead. So we did not enjoy that spike of having, record numbers. But that was one of the major decisions to make. The other one was the CBI. As I said before, it would be the most challenging thing because we were at risk of losing our visa-free access and so forth, and risk of becoming a jurisdiction that could have been a threat to international security. And our international partners were very concerned. And that is why I had to go through a number of iterations of changing the regulations to save the CBI program, to say to the international partners that we are a responsible jurisdiction, and things that happened, that I can correct them and make the program transparent, be properly governed, and we can have win-win-win-win. And so that, of course, had its own consequences, because we would see naturally a decrease in some of the revenue generation while we have to do all these things to maintain the program for the long term. I'm very proud of my work on that one. I was able to work with our team to change the regulations, bring them to a standard that will be respected and acceptable. We were the first country to move so aggressively. And then as the chair of OECS, I work with other leaders to get to a memorandum of understanding, which everybody has signed for the first time in history in the OECS. And we have also brought in the OECS authority, the central bank, to help us to set up a regulatory system which will be put in place before the end of this year. And so we are now in the process of making the CIU a statutory body, a private company, to give it, of course, all the transparency and everything else that would be required, or at least be perceived. Now we have a new board led by Chairman Calvin St. Just, who is now doing interviews and so forth to build it out. So we are going to now put the CBI program on a footing that we believe will be a very competitive program, but a program that respects international security, a program that respects transparency, good governance, and all of that. So we are going to create a beautiful product that we think would put keep St. Kitts and Nevis at number one. Apart from that, in the construction sector, we have some major projects coming forward. For example, the new hospital, the Bastia High School, the housing revolution, the solar farm, which we had to renegotiate and get it right. And we have a number of agricultural programs coming forward. A very large one, which I will not mention yet. I only mention things when they are at the point of no return. We invested in tourism in terms of flights from the US, from the region as well. Our financial services, we have started, to get back into all of them. Small business, we have a small business ministry. And as you know, National Bank just launched a special small business funding program, which will connect also with the small business ministry to make sure that our small businesses get the help that they need. So we are looking at it from multiple perspectives: investments, agriculture, construction, our migration program, and small businesses and entrepreneurship. Also, we are developing the orange economy as well. As you know, we had the first convention that is part of the orange economy, where our artisans and our artists and so forth were able to make contact with reputable international persons to, in a sense, pass knowledge on to them. We had some real distinguished persons here. We want people to get into singing, dancing, whatever that sector holds, so that that can be part of their livelihood or their main source of income. And then the other thing that we are going to do with respect to all of this that we are doing as well is that we are going to launch the Aspire program. And I guess we can talk about that. That is a program where our young people will be given financial education in primary school and high school. In addition to that, we will give each child $1,000. $500 will be in savings, and another $500 will go into an investment. So they will own shares in a local company, whether it be National Bank, whether it be the cable, and we'll form another 2 companies, 1 or 2 companies where they can have shares. So they will be building wealth while they're in school. And then at 18, they can take it out. But we want to also say, let's say you're coming at 17, to say you cannot take it out less than 5 years. So if you're 17, at 22 years old, you then can take it out, because we want you to accumulate some of the dividends, some of the interest and so forth. And along with that, to make sure you get the necessary education. We feel if we invest for our young people and we give them the necessary education, that can be a poverty buster, and people can actually be able to build wealth even from their young years. This will be a revolutionary program. No other country in the Western Hemisphere that I know has such a comprehensive program. So we want to deal with the now, and we want to set the foundation for a better future as well. All of this for sustainable island state. And I would say from the economic perspective, what will transform us as well, apart from all that I mentioned, is a transformation to renewable energy. That is why we're going to have one of the largest solar farms in the whole Caribbean, and that is going to be started soon. Let me say to our people in this interview that Sol, the company that produces Gassi and St. Kitts and Nevis, has taken a major role in it. But I also want to say to our people, we need renewable energy. We need you to invest in it as well. So because we have that, it does not exclude the rest of our people. We want our people to invest as well. And so that is going to transform us significantly, shifting from fossil fuel based to renewable. And lastly on the matter is our geothermal. The geothermal we are pushing to get started. That will certainly send St. Kitts and Nevis into the stratosphere of sustainability, of progress, advancement. That is like a significant game changer. So with all of these things that I've mentioned, it's obvious that there is a lot of hope for the future. To get there will cause, I'll say, some challenges, but we will weather those challenges because we are setting the foundation for once and for all, put St. Kitts on a sustainable path, which means we can sustain what we have and make sure that those who come after us will inherit a good thing, a good St. Kitts and Nevis.
Dr. True was particularly proud of the newly introduced Aspire, or Achieving Success Through Personal Investment, Resources and Education program for children. He explained that this initiative and accompanying compulsory financial education curriculum in schools will give birth to a new generation of fiscally responsible young people.
This program, as I said, is a program where all the young people will have access to $1,000 initially. They will own shares in companies, and they will be given that education in school. It will be mandatory for them to take financial classes in school, of course age appropriate. We are already testing the curriculum. A part of Aspire, who is at the table, for example, Central Bank is at the table. I want to thank them very much. The Bankers Association, the Credit Union, the Ministry of Finance, and experts in the financial field. And also, let me add that the CAPSEC is the one who is the chair of that task force. And so we know for sure that we have the right people at the table. So it has taken some time for us to get there. But of course, with a revolutionary program like this, we have to make sure the legislation is right, the structure is right, the education that we're going to give the young people is right. So all of these things have been put in place. And so you'll see the release of our video. You'll see also the children receiving their accounts. You'll see the board that is going to manage it. I'm very, very excited about it. Even though at this moment, people would wonder what this is about. But this is really, with everything you do, you always have to have at the foundation something that would last and make sense. I say to people, it's not the money that they would have and build over time that is most important in this program. The most important thing in the program is the education. Can you imagine you're getting financial education from primary school to high school, how to manage money, how to budget, how to invest? A lot of us leave school and we don't have that knowledge. We have 10 subjects, 12 subjects, and we don't know how to manage money. We don't know how to invest. We don't know the value of money. And because of that, a lot of us are put at a disadvantage. And we say, oh, look at how good this ethnic group is in managing money. They were taught. We weren't taught. We were taught in the Caribbean, grow up, get an education, get a job, get a good job, get an income, save some, have a pension, and move on. In other jurisdictions, they say no. We believe you have to be innovative, own businesses, understand money, invest, do all these other things. Well, if they can do it, our people can do it too. And I am determined that this program, which is a revolutionary program, let's think it's be the example. And I hope other countries in the Caribbean, countries that might be somewhat disadvantaged, will look at giving financial education to their young people as a means of helping the country to advance. But I got an idea yesterday. We probably should extend it to adults. So what we'll do is extend the education to adults. In terms of the investment, I think adults, once they get the education, their minds will start open up. And you'll be surprised. They'll say, well, I want 10 shares in this company. I'm going to the stock market in the US because when your company come out in 10 years, I can gain this. Why don't try cryptocurrency? This is how people need to start thinking, looking at the world as their home and not just saying it's a neighbor. So with the right education, it is possible.
The Sustainable Island State agenda is heavily dependent on 7 key pillars: food security, green energy transition, economic diversification, sustainable industries, the creative economy, COVID-19 recovery, and social protection. While economic diversification is specifically identified, 4 of the pillars on their own present distinct opportunities for diversifying the economy. I asked Prime Minister Drew to explain further how this diversification is critical to establishing a sustainable island state.
If you depend on one thing, let's say you have somebody at home and you have just one salary coming into the house, for example, and that person who is bringing in that one salary, if he or she or they loses their job, just think about what will happen in that home. There's no income in the home, or the income is significantly decreased. Think about the pain that the people in that house would have to go through. What about if you had 2 people in the house making an income, for example? Or if that one person had a diversified portfolio of income. If you have 2 persons and one loses their job and the other one is working, then you say, okay, we won't stand in on one leg, 2 leg, we're on one leg now, but at least we can make it through until the other leg gets in. So it builds resilience. That is the key. You have to have a resiliency within the country so that people can be, in a sense, stable and have confidence. So that is why you cannot have just one sector so heavily dependent upon, so that if something goes wrong, the whole thing goes off balance. And that is why we have decided that you must have a diversified economy. So in that simple analogy that I use of one person bringing an income in the home, people, I think, can understand now how risky it is and how you should try to avoid that situation as much as possible. And that is why you see that I had to hit the ground running and try to get in all other areas to get them going. But I think they are going to start picking up. The one that has taken the hit is the CBI. The others will start moving and the CBI will start moving in earnest as well. So we are going to create an economy that is running on multiple engines.
During this period of change and transition, the Prime Minister also noted the importance of easing the burden on families and the business community to create an environment in which households and the local economy could rebound. Dr. Drew also said that a great deal of the economic instability in the country was compounded by the previous administration's alleged mismanagement of the public purse.
You also tangibly provided support to the people as well through a number of resets, through a number of concessions that were offered that helped individuals, families, and the business community. Can you explain some of those things and why they were important over the last 2 years? Because some of them are still ongoing.
Yes.
Why they've been so important to prop up things in the meantime.
Good. And that is very important. We took over an economy that was in deficit. And it's okay to have a deficit. People can understand. It's just that the previous administration said there was a surplus. So that is where they misled the people. In other words, in local parlance, they fooled the people. What happened is that we recognize that there was a facade. One, the SIDF, we had almost $1 billion outside of the treasury. Some of that money was wasted to some extent. But we realized that the Development Bank and Social Security were in trouble. You can't have that. And so we had to immediately stabilize Development Bank. And once we stabilized Development Bank, it was able now to pay back Social Security so that Social Security would be stabilized. And so Social Security is in a much better stead as a result. Development Bank we met was in debt of over $250 million, $333 million in debt on the verge of collapse. That is what had happened. And what was responsible for that was corruption in the Development Bank. The peace program, as they called it, was used to embezzle millions of dollars. That was sad. And who suffered? The government suffered. Social Security suffered as well. And that was a travesty. And so at this present moment, we had to invest significantly in Development Bank so that, in a sense, it can say, Social Security would not have to be at so much pain because it had about 8 to 10% of the total Social Security holdings. But it's much better now, and Social Security will be on a path of, stability and so forth. And it had to go through its own reform, which are predicted at this particular time. I say all of that to say that the economy was in a worse position than people could have imagined. And we made sure that we did the things to protect the people. And that is why we did all of this. We gave resets, independence reset. We had to do that because people were still at home, some of them, still getting back to work. And remember, people accumulated debt over the 2 years. The mortgage did not disappear. They had a moratorium, but they accumulated the payments. And so people now had to go back and pay this. So here you are coming out of COVID struggling and then meeting debts higher than you had before. That is what is causing some of the pain presently. People are still paying off some of those debts. And it's challenging. We also gave a number of dividends as well so that people can have some income almost immediately and spend it in the economy so that the economy could pick up. We gave more VAT days, more concessions. We gave a lot of support. For example, coming out of COVID, that year we gave support for back to school.
Right.
These things have cost us significant amount when you look at it, but we couldn't allow our people to suffer more than they were suffering. And we sought to implement these things, and we helped a significant number of people. We had support for students in Development Bank, take down the interest rate, tell them don't pay while they're studying. Otherwise, students would not be able to study. We gave a special small loan for small businesses, so all of them could stay afloat. We gave hundreds of small businesses. We went from the Development Bank with the central government, getting the resources to the Development Bank. Went to National Bank and said, you must do things also to help the situation and the banking community and the credit union community. And a number of them, they have stepped up to the plate to help. So all those things we did to help our people. I wish we could have done more. And I'm always seeking for ways to do more. Do I acknowledge that there's some people who still have challenges? Yes, they have challenges. And I feel those challenges that they have. And that is why I'm working so many hours per day with the team to get us past this. And so we are in the process of making sure we lay the foundation and create the environment for our people to continue to grow and to move forward.
He also pointed to the many social support initiatives that have been implemented to further cushion some of the challenges some families still face.
When you talk about the social support, for example, we introduced the Children's Health Fund. That is to make sure that children don't die because the parents don't have money. As a matter of fact, St. Kitts and Nevis recorded no deaths of any child between 1 and 4 in 2023. I don't think any other country on earth had that. That is a result of programming and improving the health sector. Even though there are some criticisms, we have advanced significantly to achieve major achievements like this. We were able to rebound quickly with the vaccination of our children, to the point where we, along with Antigua, we are leading possibly the world in terms of getting to our children with vaccination. We bounced back very quickly. And I want to thank PAHO for their partnership. We bought a bus together and send the professionals around the country to find the children who were missed during the COVID. And so I would say, in a great sense, all of these social protections to make sure children go to school. We increased the subvention for preschool, so parents will get more money. We made college free. So here in St. Kitts and Nevis, we gave them laptops, we gave them iPads. That's what, and now we are giving the children the investments. So we have invested heavily in our children. That is why I know the future is bright, because we have made the necessary investments. It's just a matter of time until you start to see the results of all of that. And we have invested in our adults. For example, the STEP program, when there was no employment coming out of COVID, we allowed it to grow. Even changing to the LIFT program, we know that we had to transform it as well, because it was in a sense unsustainable. If we don't make it sustainable, it will collapse. And we also, of course, had to go to the Elevate program from the so-called Peace program. And what I want to reiterate with this is that the Peace program was used to embezzle money from the Development Bank to the tune of over hundreds of $millions. How can a country allow such a corrupt system to continue? It will collapse under its own weight and destroy the fabric of the country. That, I think, was a great travesty. And the young men on the program and women who deserve a program that would help them, most of the resources did not go to them. And they sought to, the administration corrupted the system so much that they were pulling them, some of them, into corruption. Some of them not knowing. And it is sad that a government led such a corrupt program to the point where it was threatening the very survival of the Development Bank, which was having a tremendous negative impact on social security. This thing would have led to collapse. But I say all the time, when you're in medicine, when you have a patient and you treat them so they don't die or get extremely sick, sometimes it's not appreciated as much as when you have a patient who was extremely sick and you bring them back. But it's always best not to let them get extremely sick. And so we did a lot of things to protect the people of St. Kitts and Nevis and protect the country. Of course, we had to save the Development Bank.
The Prime Minister spoke at length about the widespread corruption his administration uncovered in the practices of the former administration. He has placed blame for the near collapse of the Development Bank of St. Kitts Nevis squarely in the lap of the former administration, which was led by Dr. Timothy Harris. Prime Minister Drew has accused the former administration of using the Alternative Pathways Lifestyle Program, which became widely known as the Peace, to allegedly embezzle hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars. Under his leadership, however, this administration has transitioned Peace to the more transparently run and goal-oriented Elevate. He has also formed a new Department of Citizen Security within the Ministry of National Security to specifically address the issues of violence and crime from a public health perspective. The Prime Minister expressed confidence that peace and harmony can be restored in the Federation if all stakeholders, including political parties, unite to create solutions.
Generally, crime in St. Kitts and Nevis has gone down. What is happening is, as I said, the homicides because of what is happening here. So in the broader sense, crime has gone down. And I want to, of course, salute those who work in the security agencies for their hard work. I must do that. The issue with the peace program is that, one, remember at first, the then Minister of National Security denied it existed. So they were hiding the program when we were saying that we know there was a program, but the issue with the program was that it was being used to embezzle money. If people were to reflect and remember, people must also remember that the Development Bank used to be open on a Saturday and a Sunday till midnight. And we did an audit there where we had interviews of persons that said that money was being moved out in bags and plastic bags. So we also have evidence, because the money would be collected from National Bank in a duffel bag, it goes over to Development Bank and is divided in the boardroom in cash and hundreds of thousands of dollars per week. I mean, and they hid that from the people. Now, in terms of the peace program, the essence to help young people is fundamental. I have called for that. I have participated. I have set up programs in St. Peter's, for example, football, basketball, social programs, and they work. And I did not have any money. I was a substitute teacher at the time. And then when I came back as a doctor, I had more resources where I could have invested more. But I came to recognize that it had to be an all of community approach for it to work. And I remember 3 ladies whose name I always call: Mary Clark, Mrs. Patricia Nurse Clark, Anita Davis, and Shauna Maynard. 3 women and myself. And we set up the Eagle Boys Club. We accounted for every boy in St. Peter's, and it worked. So I know it would work. And even from then till now, I had basketball competition, set up football competition, educational programs to help young people, because these programs work. So if you're going to have programs like that to truly help, they will work. However, with this one, what they were looking for is a short-term fix, which all the studies have shown. You have to be very careful, because you put on a Band-Aid for today, but the situation will get worse. Not remain the same, get worse. We saw it in Jamaica, because how they were setting up the peace system is a Don system. Jamaica has a Don system. Trinidad was heading to a Don system. Ecuador, a Don system. El Salvador, a Don system. Haiti, a Don system. All of these countries that thought they could have paid for peace, they ended up with a Don system, which made the situation much worse. So it was frightening that we were setting up ourselves for a situation that would be so bad, it would be hard to come back. Look at what is happening to Haiti. That is how they started, the Don system. Look at what happened to El Salvador. The new president had to lock everybody up because the situation had gotten so bad. Look at Ecuador, where the gangs said, okay, it's time to take over. Mm-hmm. Look at what is happening in Trinidad. And remember, someone tried to take over Trinidad. Look at what is happening in Jamaica. And when I saw it was being done here, I got very frightened because I know where it would go. So in a sense, what we are doing with the public health approach is a scientific approach. It's proven that it will work. Of course, you have to get everybody on board and implement it. And I want to, of course, take this opportunity to thank all the political parties for coming to the table and for us to really get real scientific solutions so that we can deal with the matter and not put on a Band-Aid. It's like putting on a plaster on a sore that has a cancer inside it. Do you know you put on the plaster, it hides the cancer and it gets worse instead of going in and dealing with the cancer? So these Band-Aids actually make situation worse even in health. You don't just cover up a wound, you go and treat the wound so that the wound can heal. And sometimes you leave the wound open so it can heal from the inside out. And therefore, I'm simply saying that we have to have this scientific approach, which is the public health approach. Violence is a disease. Which area of study deals with diseases? public health. And so the studies have been done, solutions have been put out. We just need to have the solutions that are tailored to St. Kitts and Nevis. And it will work. So I'm going to keep pushing it. I'm going to keep pushing it. I'm going to put it out there. All of society must come on board to resolve the matter. No band-aid of creating a done system such as the peace program can solve the matter. Because we did the crime dynamic study in 2022 to 2023 when I was only there for a short time. And it showed the numbers. You see what it said? So it means that even when you had that program, the situation was getting worse underneath. Of course, being covered up by a facade. But the other thing that drove down the numbers was because we were in COVID. And when you're in COVID, a lot of the times the country was shut down. If the country is shut down under curfew, nothing is going to happen, hardly anything. If I shut down the country now, what do you think is going to happen? Nothing is going to happen. But who lives in a shut down country? Nobody. And therefore, I want to take this opportunity to ask all of society, the political parties, the NGOs, the Christian society, the religious communities, sporting communities, even those who are in the media and the orange economy, the farmers, the fishers, whatever you do in St. Kitts and Nevis, we want you to come on board and preach a message of end violence, end crime, and let us all work together for a better St. Kitts and Nevis. That has to be the underlying message. As it says, partnership for safer communities. And so I want to encourage us to really come together and look for what will work and really help to resolve the situation. It will not be creating a done system. It will make it worse. And because St. Kitts is small, it will even be more grave than what happened in these other jurisdictions that are bigger. So we can't risk it. I know it's challenging and I know it's hard, but history must show that we offered what we know was the best solution to resolve the matter. And I'll push it as hard as possible.
And your humility just showed because you glossed over the fact that you have extended the olive branch to all the political parties in St. Kitts and Nevis,
Yes.
and said, look, I can't do it alone.
Right.
It has to be all of us together. This
Right.
cannot be politicized.
Right.
A lot of other people have said that, but they've never gone to the extent with your administration which is to create a forum and not just say welcome, to invite them, to go out of your way to invite them to the table.
Yes.
Why was that so critically important?
It's critically important, maybe because from my vantage point, I have been studying this whole issue of crime and violence in St. Kitts for a while. When I was a teacher, and then when I studied medicine, and I saw the data, and then I was taught how to interpret that data. Then I said the things that I did before, they worked because they were all of community approach. And I said, if all of us don't come together, this matter cannot be resolved. Here is the information, the data in my face. That is when you have to put country above self. How can I know that? And the people have elected me and I not go before the people and tell them honestly, I cannot do it alone. No political party can do it alone. No one person can do it alone. And therefore, all must come to the table. It must be that way because at the end of the day, I want a safer and better St. Kitts and Nevis always. Let us continuously become better as we go forward. And for this matter, all of us work together to make it better. So in that vein, I want to say, thanks. I heard that Pam had a forum where they brought people in to discuss. I want to congratulate Pam on doing that. And PLP, I think, had a march against crime and violence. I want to congratulate them on doing that. In the government where the Labour Party is, we have been doing a lot as well. I want everybody to get involved because when everybody gets involved, we can really resolve the matter. I get very concerned when I hear anybody think that they alone have the solution. The reason why I'm concerned is that I know they don't have the solution, one, and secondly, they are fooling the people. And if you fool the people to believe something that is not so, that to me has a tremendous multiplier effect. Because again, people would not recognize that it takes all of us to resolve the matter. And so, in a sense, I'll continue to push that. I hope PAM continues, PLP continues, CCM continues, NRP continues, we in Labour will continue. I want the church to do it, the Rastafarians to do it, the sports club to do it. You know, whatever you do, you know, the media association can push out messages, the radio stations, the newspapers. If all of us decide that we are going to band together to condemn crime and violence and really promote a holistic approach and a safer St. Kitts and Nevis, that I think that message would resonate and we will find ourselves in a beautiful position. And I'll keep pushing it as much as possible because the solution is there, but it takes all of us.
Now, as a medical doctor, you have certainly not abandoned the healthcare industry.
No.
Already, you have delivered and broken ground on the new JNF hospital.
Yes.
You have indicated the very exciting idea of a health city,
Yes.
which will start here, which will involve both research, medical care and treatment, medical tourism. It's all very exciting. Tell us about some of the things that you have already achieved and expect to achieve in the area of healthcare in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Right, so we have done a lot because I believe healthcare is a right. It is a foundational principle of the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party and international labour movement, that healthcare is a human right. And from that premise, we are working towards a number of critical things. For example, the Children's Fund, No Child Should Die. We are also making sure that we have services at the hospital that would help to save people's lives and better their health. For example, when we came in, there were no eye surgeries in St. Kitts and Nevis. They had abandoned, to some extent, the eye clinic. We invested hundreds of thousands of US dollars to get some top-line equipment. And today, people can go and get their cataract done and different type of surgeries done. We also recognize children who were dying because we could not offer some advanced medical care. And I said, no, let's put a fund in place that no child would die unnecessarily. And we have helped. You remember Woody from Nevis. I just heard of the story. He's a young man in St. Kitts and Nevis. I didn't ask no question, when does he have to go? Let us get the resources. And today, he's doing much better. And there were a number of children who had heart surgery and heart interventions who have not been spoken of, but we were able to save a lot of them. Then we brought the most specialists in St. Kitts ever at the hospital. We have the most specialists ever at JNF. We have a specialist in nerves and neurology. We have a specialist in blood sugar, endocrinologist. We have 4 internists, anesthesiologists, more pediatricians, more surgeons, more persons in the emergency room, psychologists, psychiatrists. So we, a plethora of specialists that we have never had. We formed the blood bank and so forth. So we have not abandoned the JNF at all, as some people are suggesting. As a matter of fact, we have invested the most in JNF since its construction. We now have the CT scan on board. That is different to the MRI. The MRI building is going forward. We have just fixed up and refurbished the foyer in collaboration with the cable. We'll unveil that in a few days so people can see how much we are investing. So we have invested a lot in healthcare all across the country. And the new hospital, people asking why. Because again, I know that this hospital cannot withstand a category 5 because of the state it's in. It has been there for a long time, and it was built under the previous Labour administration, which was appropriate for that time. How can I know that we are in the age of climate change? We can be hit by a Cat 5 at any time. We have a hospital that can withstand it. And I should not do something immediately. It does not seem like an immediate need because if you go there, the basic structure is in place. But it will become an immediate need after. I remember the story of the 10 Little Monkeys, a book that my grandmother gave me when I was young. And there are these 10 little monkeys. I was probably 3 or 4 when I was reading it. And I remember those 10 little monkeys, every night it rained. They say, we're going to build a house. In the morning, the sun comes out, they go on to play, they forget the house. In the night when it rained, we're going to build a house. In the day, it's sunny, no house. They forget about the house. And the 10 little monkeys never built a house. Because when the sunny days come, they forget the hard days. I can't do that. And that story is embedded in me. I have to, even though it's sunny and shiny now, I have to always know that the dark night will come. And I will need a house. And the house that we have in terms of the hospital is not appropriate. So history cannot judge that I knew that this would not be able to withstand and I did nothing. So it does not seem like an emergency because the emergency has not happened. So this is a proactive move. I say one institution that should remain standing is your hospital. And so in time, we will understand why. But as leadership, that's a risk I'm willing to take because I understand and I'm honest and straight up with the people, whether they always agree or not. And they have the right to disagree, of course, which I respect. But that is why I'm doing that. And so that is going to be, we're going to create a health city. We're going to have private, public, human health, animal health. We're going to create the one health space. We're going to have a research center where we're going to collaborate with Ross to do all these studies. So St. Kitts we want to promote health tourism, which we are pushing with other private areas. That's one. And in addition to that, we are going to create research so St. Kitts can be known as a place where research is taking place. And that, I think, would bring some prestige to the country. And we are moving forward in that. So I am proud of that as well. It's all building the foundation of what St. Kitts and Nevis will become.
And I know a lot of people were excited about the fact that we now have triage
Yes.
at the hospital.
Yes.
Because what you've done is brought in 3 people who are a bit more qualified than our RNs,
Yes.
but a little bit less. So they're almost like physician's assistants.
Exactly.
They can do a little bit more, but a little bit less qualified. But that speeds up the process of people having to go to the hospital.
Exactly.
You've also networked all the healthcare systems in St. Kitts. So it doesn't matter if you're at Poxon, for example, medical center, you can see a doctor there but get immediate intervention if a specialist insight is required from JNF or wherever else that person might be based. That is something significant.
Yes, very, very significant. We run the fiber optic cables, and I want to thank the cable and so forth who won the bid to do that. That is a first. And with that, we're going to introduce the electronic health record. You see, all of these things we are building out, I think at some point people will come to recognize because a lot we have done in a short space of time. But the reason why we had to do so much in a short space of time, it is because of all the risks we were facing. And you have a window in which you can do those things. So we have done that. That is a tremendous, tremendous achievement in and of by itself. A doctor can do telemedicine. For example, when we tried it, we were at JNF and you had a nurse seeing a patient in Kayon, and that nurse can have a doctor in JNF and say, I have a patient with high blood pressure, the pressure is so and so, the patient is stable, and the doctor can say, okay, give the patient this, and the patient may not have to come to JNF. So we have introduced that as well. So it's a number of things we have introduced, and I'm proud of it, and it's showing. Of course, you'll never eliminate everything. There are going to still be challenges. But I would say that we have improved significantly, even with the wait time. We might have the lowest wait time, I think, before you see a health professional in a hospital in the whole Caribbean. It might be the shortest wait time in a public institution in the whole Western Hemisphere. It's very possible. As soon as you enter, within 10 minutes or so, you are seeing a healthcare professional taking your vitals. And they will determine how soon you see the physician based on the severity of your illness or the urgency of your illness. That is tremendous. And I think that has to be highlighted as well. And with that, I want to thank all of the health professionals for their dedication and hard work.
Prime Minister Drew has time and again referred to climate change as an existential threat to human existence. Despite being the leader of the smallest nation in the Western Hemisphere, he has emerged as a giant in championing the cause of small island developing states globally in the fight for climate justice. He is adamant that the world's industrial nations must be held accountable so that small nations have a fair chance of withstanding climate change and the increasingly severe weather and environmental phenomena that accompany it, such as hurricanes, drought, and coastal erosion. With the announcement of the new climate-smart JNF Hospital and Justice Complex, the Terrance Drew administration has proven its commitment to ensuring that the Federation's people and economy are prepared to adapt to the changes that will accompany climate change.
Again, maybe because of my science background, and I did geography at the A-level standard, and I loved it. I have seen, so since then, I knew of climate change because we were studying it in geography, but it wasn't as popular as it is now. And there were deniers of climate change as a result. So I know that it is a real threat to existence. Look at what happened to the islands in the Grenadines. a hurricane that came unexpectedly early, ripped through those countries, and those countries are still wheeling. I think every year the Caribbean will have to be dealing with a storm like that. It is the Grenadines that got hit. It's going to be some other island, some other country very soon. And therefore, the reason why I say it's an existential threat, if you get 2 of those in a year and a country get hit in 1 year or back to back, because it takes us longer to recover than anybody else, can you imagine the devastation and the setback? You can be set back decades. People are going to migrate. People are going to be like, well, I can't live like this. Every minute I have to be preparing for a Category 5 hurricane. Who lives like that? That is why it's an existential threat. You'll have climate migration. People leave because they can't deal with that stress. You took decades to build your wealth and you lose it in one event. And so if we who are affected the most don't scream the loudest, then we ourselves are doing the whole world a disservice. You can't be feeling the pain and not tell the world you're feeling the pain. You are in the best position to tell the world you are feeling the pain. And to tell the world what the solutions are, because you will have your own homegrown solutions. You tell the world we have to come together to deal with this matter. Today, I might be affected to this extent, but I know it's coming for you as well. So I see it as my responsibility, locally, of course, regionally, and to say to the world, this is how we are being affected. Because then the world can say, then if you were being affected that way, why is it you didn't shout? You have a space at COP. You have a space at the UN. You have a space at this. You have a space at that. And I'm not hearing you. So you yourself, you are doing a disservice. So I take that responsibility seriously. I can't expect, for example, the president, let's say, of the United States to scream louder than me.
Right.
When my country is just a little dot in the United States and can disappear with one event, I am supposed to go there and tell them what is my situation so that they too can understand. Mm-hmm. So that is why I'm so passionate about it. That is why I take it so seriously, because it is really an existential threat. And we who are affected the most must be at the front line of letting the world know. But in all of that, we must also come to the fore, not as alarmists alone, right, but also come with solutions and willingness to work. So while we are doing that, St. Kitts has put forward, St. Kitts Nevis, we have put forward the bold initiative of a sustainable island state and said to the world, we are not at the table just complaining. We have a real solution. Partner with us to implement this, which can help us and help others as well. Because we can't do it alone. Because as much as we think we can do it alone, if we stay here and do everything we have to do, but you have the big emitters still emitting and damaging the climate more, what you're doing will go for naught. That is why it has to be the whole world. Can't be us alone. We're suffering disproportionately. However, those who are the emitters, if they are not brought to the table to be part of the solution, it will never be solved. And we will suffer the most. So it takes the whole world to do it.
And in one of your very first UN presentations, you spoke to the issue of climate justice.
Yes.
And very recently, you were able to take some great degree of credit for the fact that during your administration, organizations now like the UN, the World Bank, the IMF, they realize finally, while we may have high GDPs, gross domestic product rates, it does not necessarily accurately reflect our situation when we're hit by these threats like hurricanes. And so we need to be able to still have access to concessionary rates of financing in the event when we are struck by these storms, because they were staying by us, but you're making a lot of money.
Yeah.
But it's not proportionate to what the reality is on the ground. We have been able to get that recognition. But what does that mean now in terms of continuing the fight? Because this is just a small concession really for us as small island developing states, where they've finally grudgingly said, well, we realize that we need to take some responsibility. But how much further do we need to take that?
Good. I want to say from day one, in 2022, my first UN speech, just maybe a month after I got elected, I spoke to the issue of climate justice. And I also spoke about the MDVI, the Multidimensional Vulnerability Index. Don't just judge us at GDP or GDP per capita. Because on GDP per capita, you're missing the point. We have a very small economy, and one event can wipe out all of that. And so we needed a more whole, realistic way of judging what we are going through. And so that will help us to present our situation more realistically and get access to the funding that we need to build resiliency and sustainability. And so it is critically important. I will continue to bring it to the fore wherever I go. At the UN, my address, this UN, I'm going to speak to it. And I'm going to also bring what solutions St. Kitts and Nevis is also putting forward. Transform, going to renewable energy, our recycling program, our farming program, our coastal program. We have put in place a number of programs to deal with this scourge of climate change, our new hospital, our housing solution, and so forth. So I want to say St. Kitts is small. We have a major problem, but we have our homegrown solutions. We want to highlight the issue, and we are asking you to partner with us because we can't do it alone. That is my message to the UN, a message of reality, but also a message of hope, and to thank the UN for really acknowledging the MDVI, which gives a true picture of what is happening to us here, a small island state.
February 2025 is fast approaching, and with it the official half-term of Dr. Drew's administration. This will also signal the coming of a new election campaign cycle, as the Federation's next federal elections are due by 2027. Dr. Drew told me in the next half of his term, while political activities will begin to gear up, he intends to remain laser-focused on his present commitment to serve the people as their Prime Minister and the parliamentary representative for Constituency 8.
What is it that you have in store for the rest of your administration? Because very soon, in addition to having to run the government, you also have to start dealing with the politics of it again.
Right.
What's next for Prime Minister Drew?
Good to consolidate our early gains. There needs consolidation, and to come to the people and say, look, we promise you that we will do this. We made commitments, rather, that we'll do this, and this is what we have done. And so in a great sense, I think by the 3-year mark, 2.5-year mark, the midpoint, I'll be able to say to the people, based on the challenges we have done these things, and we are moving St. Kitts and Nevis forward. I'll be able to say to them, we have bring energy solutions with the electricity issue. We have brought water, because we inherited a country with no water. We have dug wells, we have built desalination plants. I will say that to them. We have created jobs in construction, in agriculture. We have strengthened small business. We have opened up new areas, sectors of the economy. We have strengthened tourism. We saved our CBI. I will be able to bring to them. And then we have created long-term plans. For example, crime and violence from a public health perspective. Aspire for children to build that financial foundation even from school days. Building a sustainable island state and being respected regionally and internationally for our approach and our seriousness. And the fact that we are part of the solutions and not just complaining that we are a proactive nation. The point is, I think St. Kitts and Nevis has a good chance of being the beacon of hope. That is how I take it. I think that the world needs a beacon of hope. I want St. Kitts and Nevis to be that beacon of hope. Well, climate change and this and that. Well, look at that country, that small country in the Caribbean. Well, if they could do it, we can do it too. That is what I think is the responsibility of St. Kitts and Nevis, to show the world, be a torchlight, that it is possible. I take that seriously. Our administration take that seriously, and we will work towards that.
Now, at the end of the day, and through all of this, you're still just a man.
Yes.
You're a father, and very recently you became a new husband.
Yes.
And you still have a country to run.
Yes.
You have your constituents to take care of.
Yes.
How are you able to create that balance between your professional life, your personal life, and still have something left back for yourself?
I know, it's challenging.
It is.
You know, I had to learn a lot during my medical years. You know, it's challenging as well. Priority, proper planning, time management, and continuously seeking to improve. Those things I think are critically important. And the foundation of all of that is a strong spiritual life. Without God, and I'm not talking in platitudes here, but without God, none of this is possible. So you have to have the right spiritual foundation, and then on top you build everything else. And that has been my approach. And so it's obvious, it's challenging, but I never expected anything less. But with God, I know everything is really possible. I mean, I have had a life. People know my story. I learned from very young. Things can be overcome. Believe me. Well, I know that deep down. So each time I see a challenge, I know in the depths of my spirit and my heart, it can be overcome. Not just by hearing it, but because I had to live it. And therefore, that is the same approach that I bring. And again, back then, I had to depend on God. So I'm not going to abandon that at all. That is the foundation of everything else. So if you ask me, the one thing, my faith in God. And then everything else I speak about, the ways of practically doing it, time management, prioritizing, continuously improving, and so forth, working with others and a team, being, understanding I don't have all the answers and be willing to reach across the aisle and others to get them on board to resolve matters. So I think that is how I handle the matter.
An objective examination of the past is often the most effective way to predict future outcomes. As the conversation wound down, Prime Minister Drew and I returned to where we began, his hopes for the future of his political organization, the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party, and his beloved country, St. Kitts and Nevis. He also shared how he hopes history will record his service.
So from a party perspective, I want to be remembered for one who sought to do everything to build the party and to live out the principles of the party, especially for the good that we can do, to make sure we leave the structures and the organization in place so that it can continue to serve the members of the party and the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. That means a lot to me. Also to make space in the party. I said I will spend 2 terms. And I've been very serious about that too, but the party should go on. Because the principles of the party, I think those principles will continue to serve St. Kitts and Nevis very, very well. So that is what I want to leave, a legacy, a party that is better than I met it, and a party that will continue to serve humbly and living out its creed, as I said before, for the good that we can do. With respect to the former leader, the Honorable Dr. Denzil Douglas, right honorable, that is how I think it has to be done, and it must be done. So even when it comes to me, I have to be gracious to the next leader. If you don't have that, it destroys everything. Believe me, it can destroy political parties. Look what's happening in Barbados, for example. Look at so many other political parties that this has happened to. We are the oldest in the Caribbean. And we are the oldest because of how we function. And if we continue to build on those, we will continue to be the oldest political party in the whole region. And so that means a lot to me. So from a political standpoint, I want to leave a legacy in that I left the party continuously advancing towards the fulfillment of our creed for the good that we can do. I want to leave St. Kitts and Nevis as a sustainable island state. What does that mean? That we were able to build a country that was resilient in all aspects, that was sustainable, which means it can continue into the future, so that those generations that are to come, they would inherit a good St. Kitts and Nevis. And of course, in the present, to make sure we create the best scenario, the best environment for our people to live and thrive. And I will say to them, there will be challenges because this is life. However, I can promise them I'll work hard, I'll always keep their interests first, and I will seek to create that St. Kitts and Nevis that all of us want. That is what I will always work towards.
As we ended our discussion, Prime Minister Drew took time to thank his cabinet, whom he fondly refers to as the A-Team. Without his team and their commitment to St. Kitts and Nevis and their support of his vision of creating a sustainable island state, he acknowledged that the tremendous successes that have been achieved in just 2 years would not have been possible. He also extended deep appreciation to his constituents in Number 8, without whose support he would not have had the opportunity to realize the dream of transforming the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis into a strong, resilient, sustainable island state that is ready to face the challenges of today while rising to meet the promise of a bright and prosperous tomorrow.
None of this would be possible, of course, without God at the center, the support of the people. But I want to especially thank the A-team, the team that has been working with my cabinet colleagues, and the two ambassadors who have really lent their support. So I want to thank the Deputy Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Jeffrey Henley, to thank our leader in the House as far as government business is concerned, the Honorable Conway Maynard, to thank the Honorable Dr. Denzel Douglas, former Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, to thank the Honorable Marsha Henderson for hard work. And let me say, for those who are seeking to attack her, I condemn all those vile attacks against her. She doesn't deserve it. She works hard for this country. I also want to thank the Honorable Samuel Duggins for his hard work, and our senators, the Honorable Aislinn Phillip, the Honorable Dr. Joya Clark. I want to thank them very much for their support and their hard work. Without a team, it's not possible. No one man can do anything. And so it is up to me to lead that team so that we can accomplish what we seek to accomplish. I wanted to make sure that they know how much I appreciate them and value them. And I ask the people of St. Kitts and Nevis to also extend that appreciation and that value to them as well. With respect to my constituency number 8, I would not be here had it not been for them. They elected me and gave me the opportunity to lead at the constituency level and to become the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis. And I want to thank them for their support. I'm working in the constituency and I'll continue to work to improve the conditions of the constituency. So I want to thank them dearly. And to the comrades of the St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party, it is through the party mechanisms that's why I'm here. And I want to thank the comrades from the depths of my heart as well. Thank you.
And so we end the 9, an era of transformation, with Prime Minister Dr. Terrance Drew, the crafter of the ambitious vision of revolutionizing the lives of every Kittitian and Nevision. But this is a dream that can only be fulfilled if we all join hands together to achieve it. By supporting the goal of transforming the nation into a sustainable island state, what we're really rallying behind is the development of a robust economy through sustainable development that can continue to sustain our way of life while preserving our culture, traditions, and our beautiful but fragile environment. To do so, we must all embrace sustainable agricultural, tourism, energy, and waste management practices that will also minimize the threat climate change poses to all of us. Creating a delicate balance between economic growth and smart environmental stewardship is the key to achieving the transformation into a sustainable island state. In just 2 years, the brave and courageous 9, led by Prime Minister Dr. Terrance Drew, have created a ripple in the waters of time that will impact the lives of tens of thousands of people for generations to come. Thank you for joining me on this adventure as we explore the work and achievements of Prime Minister Dr. Terrance Drew and his government over the last 2 years. I'm Ebony Brandon.